Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, HCM Cloud Security and Reporting. My name is Jordan Fuger-Burmeister, and I'm our marketing manager over at Alere. Before we get into today's topic, we are going to cover a couple of housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed on mute for the duration of the presentation. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send them through the chat to panelists or through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will be answering any questions that we have at the end of the presentation. We do also have a series of polls questions today that allow us to cater the content for future webinars, so please participate in those as you see them come up. And then a recording of today's webinar will be sent out in the next couple of days. This recording, as well as all of our other Alere webinar recordings, are available on alere.com, are also available on the Alere Inc. YouTube channel. With that, I'm going to hand it over to one of our presenters, Rachel.
Agenda really quick. Let's see if we can get this to start. Oh, there we go. Okay. We'll be starting off with some introductions. We'll do a brief security overview, a reporting overview, and then kind of discuss how the two work together, some general tips and tricks, and then we'll end with a Q&A. So my name is Rachel Rudolph. I've been an HCM Cloud consultant with Alere for 3 years now. I've been a part of multiple large-scale implementation projects supporting across modules and specifically leading in the performance, security, and workflow areas.
Hi, I am Karen Costics, and I am an HCM consultant with Alere going on 4 years now. I've been on several projects where I've been specializing in HCM reporting for benefits, payroll, and core HR primarily.
Thank you, Karen. I'll just touch on Alere's history very briefly, given the length of today's webinar. But if you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to Jordan at the end. We did just celebrate our 15-year anniversary. Hopefully we'll have a big party next year. We are recognized as a trusted advisor and a thought leader in the industry, and we're recognized as a member of Oracle's Cloud Excellence Implementer Program.
Thanks, Rachel. So before we get into the rest of the presentation, we are going to do a quick poll question. Where is your organization at on your cloud journey? Are you already live on Oracle Cloud, mid-implementation, maybe purchased cloud but haven't begun your implementation, considering that move to cloud, or don't currently have any plans with Oracle Cloud? We'll give everybody about 15 seconds here to answer. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and close this out. So it looks like most of you are already live on Oracle Cloud, but we do have a few that are mid-implementation or still kind of considering that move. Rachel?
Thank you, Jordan. With that, we'll go into a brief security overview, starting with another poll question.
Keeping you guys on your toes right away at the beginning of the presentation. So before we dive in, how familiar are you with Oracle Cloud Security? Would you consider yourself an expert, maybe intermediate level skills, a beginner still trying to learn, or this is your first time really thinking about cloud security? Again, we'll give everyone about 15 seconds to answer here. And we're going to go ahead and close this one out. So it looks like most of you are beginners trying to learn. This is a great foundation for you guys, as well as some intermediate users and first-time users here as well.
Okay, perfect. So hopefully this will serve as a refresher to some of you, but a high-level overview to others. So there are two types of roles just to kind of start off. So these both control the functions that a user can perform. You've got your abstract role, and these are determined by who you are, not necessarily your job. So employee, line manager, contingent worker, these are going to be the most common abstract roles. And a great best practice is to auto-provision these roles. So for instance, you could have business rules set up to auto-provision the employee role to whoever has the HR assignment status as active, or whoever is a manager with reports, they would get the line manager role. And a job role, on the other hand, is segregated by module, and it's determined by your job rather than who you are. So you have, for instance, your HR analyst, your benefits administrator, compensation specialist, or your payroll manager, for an example. And job roles that involve employee transactions are never assigned directly to a user. So first you would combine the job role with the security profile, and you'd create a data role, which is then assigned to a user. So some common job roles that you're most likely to use is HR specialist. I assign this one most often. It's kind of your read-write access. You've got full access to the person management page. And you also have some access into workforce structures. So if you need to go change the department manager or something like that, you have the ability to do that. You can perform mass updates. You can do some talent management module configuration, as well as some absent management administration right from the person management area. The HR analyst is more so the reporting role associated with HR. On the front end, they really will only have view-only access, but they are able to create and edit reports on the back end. And then the HCM application administrator, they are more on the setup side. So they can do some of those core HR setups as well as personalizations, descriptive flex fields. They can set up and deploy those, as well as list of values like your value sets and your common lookups. So it's a little bit confusing, but I hope that this will kind of clarify a little bit. So your security profiles are used to define what data and whose data can be accessed. So there's quite a few different types of security profiles. You could kind of modify by person, organization, position, legislative data group, country, document type, or transaction. So the person example is a very commonly used one. So within the person security profile, I could limit to view your own record only, view whoever's in your management hierarchy, view all workers, or for instance, you could create one so you could just view all except your own record. So you've got a lot of options there. And then a data role will combine an abstract, which is that employee or line manager role, or a job role, which is that HR specialist role with security profiles. So here's a very simple example. You have the job role of HR specialist, and I'm using the country security profile, and say your business is segmented by region. So this specific one, you want to include Australia and New Zealand together. You combine the job role, the security profile, and then you get your data role, the Australia and New Zealand HR specialist. So if they were to search in person management for someone who's based in the US, they would not come up with any results. And kind of some general tips, some takeaways. You can assign security profiles directly to those abstract roles, again, employee, line manager, contingent worker. And you can assign abstract roles directly to users, and it's highly recommended that you do so with auto provisioning. Only assign a job role directly to the user if that does not have access to person records. So an HCM application administrator, that's kind of general access. You're not really working with employee transactions, along with IT security manager. That could be assigned directly to a user. That's not a problem. But don't apply security profiles to see the job roles. First, you would create a data role that inherits that job role and assign security profiles. So even in the example of an HR specialist, even if it's wide open, you can view all workers, you would still create a data role that's just HR specialist view all. A really good idea is to run the regenerate data grants process after updates. Sometimes I've gone in after updates and some pages look a little funny. You don't have access to specific tasks that you should. It's likely that your data roles were affected and that the data roles need to be regenerated. And you should definitely, this is my #1 takeaway, limit your custom roles when possible and really try to use personalizations to restrict access to specific pages. I would much rather modify an EL expression or hide a tab altogether within that structure area rather than go in and find all the different privileges associated with a certain page. So I would say that's the #1 takeaway. So I'll pass it over to Karen for the reporting overview.
Great, thanks, Rachel. So I'm going to give a brief overview of cloud reporting, but first we have another poll question.
Okay, so now kind of digging into the reporting side of the house, how familiar are you with Oracle Business Intelligence and cloud reporting? Again, expert, intermediate, beginner trying to learn more, or this is the first time you're kind of exploring the reporting space. We'll give everyone about 15 seconds. And we're going to go ahead and close that out. So again, looks like most of you are beginners trying to learn more. Back to you, Karen.
Okay, great. So hopefully this gives a helpful overview of cloud reporting and some insights for people who already are a bit more familiar. So when a company purchases cloud, they'll be automatically provisioned with Oracle's Business Intelligence. So that includes delivered reports and analytics, application pages where delivered reports and analytics can be viewed, and it also includes tools to create custom reports and analytics. So right off the bat, you'll have a lot of reporting access just by being a cloud customer. Okay, so as I mentioned, there will be pages in the application that can display delivered reports and analytics. All of the reporting is going to live is called the BI catalog. So even though you'll have those pages where you could potentially see a dashboard or an infolet, the actual report itself will live in the BI catalog. And within that catalog, there's a folder structure that's helpful to know. So there's each user will have my folder, and only the user will have access to what's in my folder. Then there's shared folders. Within the shared folders, all of the delivered content will be housed in different folders. And then there's a custom folder. So within the custom folder, that's where reports and analytics can be stored that are your custom reports that users will have access to. Also within the BI catalog, you're able to schedule the reports and edit the reports, and there's tools to create those custom reports and analytics. Next two slides, I'm going to talk a bit more about those custom tools. The first custom tool is called Oracle Transactional Business Intelligence, or OTBI for short. So OTBI is great. It's a great tool for functional users or some techno-functional users. The data comes from subject areas that are pre-built logical data structures associated with specific application modules. So you'll have subject areas for core HR, you'll have subject areas for benefits, and you'll have subject areas for payroll. The user can drop and drag selected data from the subject areas into the report. The data comes from a presentation layer built on top of the application database tables, so you don't have to actually query the database tables directly. The subject in a way kind of mirrors some of the front end work areas. Okay, the next tool for creating custom reports is called Business Intelligence Publisher, or BI Publisher for short. BI Publisher is a bit more of an involved process. You have two steps to create a BI Publisher report. First, the first step is you'll create a data model. The data model can take data from multiple sources, and including a SQL query. And then after you have your data model built, you create a report associated with the data model. So in this tool, you can actually query the database tables directly compared to the OTBI where there's an indirect layer. Okay, so now that we have an overview of cloud security and cloud reporting basics, we'll talk about how they come together to secure access to Oracle Transactional Business Intelligence subject areas, Business Intelligence catalog folders, and those Business Intelligence reports. So a user security will determine pretty much everything they can do in the cloud. It will determine if they can even navigate to the BI catalog. So if they don't have the correct security, they won't even see the option to get to the BI catalog. Once they're in the BI catalog, it will determine what folders they can access. It will determine if they can run reports. It will determine if they can view pages, view certain pages with analytics. The user security will be able to determine if they see data from a report that was built on specific subject areas. It will tell if they can create their own data models or reports, if they're even allowed to schedule reports or edit reports or change folder permissions. So it's definitely what you can do within the cloud reporting tools is definitely very dependent on your security. So we'll take a look at an example to kind of give a more clear view of what the security of a user will allow them to do. Okay, so we have, let's say we have an employee and he has two roles associated with him. One is the abstract role, he's an employee, and then he also is a human resource specialist. So as a human resource specialist, this job role will allow the user to navigate to the BI catalog. So he'll be able to get to the place where all the reports live. Once there, he'll be able to run the reports, in the shared folder, and he'll be able to return data from analytics that are built on core HR subject areas. So if the report was built on a subject area such as workforce management, worker assignment real time, the user could click on that report and then data would be returned. The user wouldn't be able to do everything. As an HR specialist, he wouldn't have the ability to create an OTBI analysis or a BI publisher data model or a BI publisher report. He wouldn't, this user could run a report that was built on a benefits subject area, but he would get a no results message because he doesn't have access to the data in the benefits subject area. One interesting thing to note here is if this user ran a BI publisher report that pulled benefits information, he actually would return results because the BI publisher report doesn't take a user security profile into account when returning data. Okay, so now that we've got the overview of security reporting and how they work together, we are going to give some tips and tricks for some common security and reporting issues that you might run into. Okay, so we have a scenario that's kind of similar to the last scenario thing I mentioned with the HR analyst. We have a BI publisher report, and it allows anyone with the BI consumer role to access data, even if the user should be restricted based on the user security profile. And so potentially, you know, maybe it's benefits information and this user has an HR specialist role and they shouldn't be looking at that kind of information. So Oracle did something really very cool with the database tables. They took the standard database tables and then they made views that actually do look at a user's security profile and take that into account when returning data. So there's a table called per all people F, and this would return all persons in the cloud. If we only wanted to return people that the user should see, so like in Rachel's scenario, when that data role security profile only should see people in Australia or New Zealand, if we used this table or this view per person secured list B, it would only return people that the user should have access to. So they have them for per all assignments M, comp salary, pay all payrolls F. So so if you have a data model that's built using these database tables, you could simply join a secured list to that table on a common key like person ID, and then it would restrict the data that was returned. Okay, so in this scenario, we kind of have the opposite thing going on. We have an OTBI report, and it runs and it gives a no results message. But there should be results based on the analysis parameters. So there's no filters or anything in the criteria that should really be limiting the results. There definitely should be results, but the user isn't seeing them. So in this case, the user might not have the correct job role to access the data in the subject area. So Oracle has this really helpful document. It's called OTBI Subject Area Documentation. You can access it on Cloud Customer Connect, and it tells you what job role you would need to access areas. So all of the subject areas that start with workforce management, you need the job role of human resource analyst. The subject areas that start with benefits, you need the benefits manager, compensation manager, payroll manager. So yeah, definitely a very helpful document to reference.
All right, and then I did also include the link to that document at the very end of the presentation, so you can always reference it there. But with our third scenario, you only want certain users to access various folders in the catalog, and you only want them to run reports rather than edit the reports. So our tip here is to use permissions, so only certain users have access to reports in the folder. This is kind of similar. For example, if you're out on Google Drive and you're sharing a document and you only want that person to edit or you want them to view. So it's just kind of, it's the cloud version of that. And you can do this on as granular of a level as a user. So Karen.Costics@Alir.com, she can only view this specific folder. Or you can do it for all HR specialists or analysts. You can do it based off job roles. So a lot of flexibility here. And again, the permissions are read or actually edit, and then the delete permission as well. And then our last scenario here, this specific tip is one that I use a lot. It's difficult to really know what a user will have access to in an environment. Our tip here is to create test users with different security access and log in to see what they can see and do. So you can definitely go out there and look at Oracle documentation and view all the different privileges associated with each role. And there are sometimes, I think, hundreds. So it's sometimes just easier to assign these various security roles that you're curious about to a test user and go in there and look around for yourself. And then additionally, if you're going through security with the different functional areas, it's very helpful to create test users to just kind of display what access they would have if they had these specific roles. And then you can really whittle down what access they need so they're not seeing pages that are unnecessary. So that's a really great tip that I use a lot. All right, so in conclusion, kind of the 4 main tips that we went through, we recommend utilizing secured lists for BI publisher reports, identifying needed job roles for subject area results. So again, like Karen said, if they're getting no results, then use that this OTBI subject area documentation list and just identify which job role they're missing and then assign it to them. Folder level security is really great for securing reports, so they could read, write, or delete reports. You can have any combination of those permissions. And then you should definitely utilize test users. So here's some of the supporting documentation as well. We have the OTBI subject area documentation, which I know Karen does reference a lot, and sometimes she'll be working with people on the reporting side and she goes, Rachel, they can't see these reports, they need this specific role. So it's really easy for me to go in there as the IT security manager and assign them the proper role. And then securing HCM is just an Oracle white paper that is extremely helpful when you're kind of learning initially about security.
Thank you, Rachel. So just a couple of reminders. Alir is actually participating in Virtual Collaborate, the Quest Digital Forum. That is still open through June 17th. We have a digital booth where you can visit, download our various webinars that we had recently, as well as a live video chat with SMEs. So definitely join us there. We do also have another Alir Learning Lab session this Thursday for those of you that are interested in the Treasury space. But along that same cloud thread, Treasury in the Cloud, which is going to explore different cloud-based TMS systems. Also, Karen and Rachel's information is right there. Feel free to reach out to them with any questions that you guys may have. As Rachel mentioned, there is that documentation in there. However, we'll make sure when we send out a recording of the webinar that we include links to that live as well. We do want to leave a second here for Q&A, as there are a couple of items in the Q&A right now. What is the difference between security profiles and job roles?
Take myself off mute. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, security profiles that can be based on person, legislative data group, country, and that's just going to be how granular you want to be with your security for each of those areas. So view all people, view all countries. And then you would then assign these security profiles to a job role. Well, technically a data role, but the privileges would be inherited through the job role. So essentially the security profile is who and what you can see. The job role is kind of the different pages that you can access, and these combine to make a data role.
Thank you, Rachel. And also, it looks like another one for you. You mentioned test users. Do you have suggestions for making those test users? Like, do you use current employees, or how do you log in?
You can kind of go about this a variety of different ways. So if you are in a test environment and you want to keep the data really clean, sometimes we'll hire in an employee that's been hired since our data conversion, and we'll enter in all their employee information and then create a user account from there so that you can kind of see what they can access on the employee self-service side, and they can see if their management hierarchy is coming up as expected. Oftentimes in test environments, though, you will not have user accounts assigned to employees that are outside of your core user group, your super user group. And so I'll pick an employee, sometimes at random, just an easy login, and I'll assign them whichever roles that I need, and then of course create that username password, and then I'll have a variety of test users at any given time, depending on which areas I need to access or demonstrate.
Excellent. And we have time for one more. If there are any additional questions, though, feel free to keep submitting them. We'll make sure to follow up with them individually. Last question for today. Looks like this one's for you, Karen. Why would you use BI Publisher instead of OTBI if security is already enabled in OTBI?
Right, it is really nice that security is enabled, but BI Publisher is great because you can do a lot of different things with it. So OTBI subject areas have many of the fields from the database, the actual database tables, but there are times when you actually wouldn't find a field in the subject areas. Sometimes you need to do more in-depth manipulation, which you can do to a point in OTBI, but you can't do all of the, sometimes there aren't functions available on OTBI. So BI Publisher does give you more ability to manipulate, as well as presented in different formats. You know, a report that needed to look a very specific way, you can do that in BI Publisher, whereas you might not be able to do it in OTBI. So yeah, so in those instances, you can use those secured list views in your BI Publisher report to have similar security to the OTBI subject areas.
Excellent. So to wrap up, just a reminder, we will be sending out that recording in the next couple of days. If you're interested in past webinars, I know Karen and Rachel have both done quite a few webinars in the past. All of those are going to be available on our Alir Inc. YouTube channel, as well as alir.com/news/webinars. And as always, please make sure to follow us on social media. We post a lot of new blog content on there, lots of new upcoming webinars, as well as our conference attendance. With that, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Rachel and Karen, for speaking today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks.